You're cornered, out of ammo. The bad guys are closing in, and there's a huge river below. Do you jump? Movies say diving into water makes you an untouchable bullet-dodging ninja. But is Hollywood lying to us? Can H2O actually act as an invisible shield against high-velocity lead? Let's dive into the wet physics. First, does a gun even work underwater? Spoiler alert, yes, it does. But the results are wildly different. In the dry world, a bullet leaves the barrel and immediately fights a losing battle against air and gravity. It punches through invisible particles, losing a tiny bit of speed with every microscopic mid-air collision. But water is a completely different beast. It's thick, heavy, and roughly 800 times denser than normal air. Imagine running through a bouncy castle versus running through waist-deep mud. That's the bullet's reality. Normal air weighs about 1.25 kilograms per cubic meter. Water tips the scales at a massive 1,000 kilograms. This extreme density creates a brutal wall of resistance. The bullet slams into countless molecules instantly. With every microscopic collision, the bullet forcefully donates a chunk of its kinetic energy to the liquid. It's like paying an outrageously high toll tax on a microscopic highway until the bullet goes totally bankrupt. Eventually, it loses so much momentum that it harmlessly sinks, lacking the power to puncture a paper bag. But wait, before you dive in, consider the angle. A 2008 university study revealed a fun skipping effect. If a standard bullet hits the water surface at an incredibly shallow angle, specifically under 12 degrees, it won't even penetrate. It acts exactly like a perfectly thrown skipping stone, bouncing off the surface. So, if the villain is shooting from a low vantage point, the river surface practically becomes a trampoline. What if they shoot from a steep cliff, firing straight down at a massive 90-degree angle? Panic time yet? Well, it heavily depends on the firearm. Let's look at the absolute heavyweights, high-powered sniper rifles. Think back to iconic war movies where soldiers dive under the surf to escape a barrage of machine gun fire. Hollywood shows bullets zipping through the ocean depths, seeking targets like angry, metallic mini torpedoes. To test this myth, experts fired a massive 7.62mm rifle round directly into a huge tank of water. In the air, this beast travels at a blistering 2,700 feet per second. That is wildly supersonic territory. But when it hit the water point blank, the results were shocking. The mighty bullet barely made it 3 feet. Famous TV scientists took it further, testing monstrous .50 caliber rounds traveling at 3,000 feet per second. You'd think a bullet that huge would part the sea like Moses. Instead, it met a violent, super sudden end. The moment it breached the surface, the overwhelming resistance of the water caused the bullet to shatter. It exploded into tiny, harmless fragments of copper and lead after traveling a pathetic 3 feet downward. The physics rule here is delightfully ironic. The faster the bullet hits the water, the harder water hits back. It's like driving a sports car into a brick wall at 200 miles per hour. The sheer speed destroys the object. The extreme kinetic energy of large weapons actually becomes their own worst enemy when hitting a dense liquid. So, ironically, you are mathematically much safer from a massive military sniper rifle than a sluggish pistol. Because handguns fire much slower bullets, they avoid that catastrophic, bullet-shattering liquid resistance. A standard 9mm round fired straight down can actually penetrate up to 7 or 8 feet underwater. If you're hiding just below the surface from a basic handgun, you might still catch a nasty, unwanted piercing. To be completely safe from a pistol-wielding maniac, you really need to dive at least 9 feet into the dark. And what if they bring a shotgun to the pool party? Well, that's when your underwater sanctuary gets risky. Shotgun slugs are giant, heavy chunks of lead. They carry an absolute truckload of brutal kinetic energy. Because they are relatively slow but massively heavy, they push through the water further than a rifle bullet. However, the immense drag still catches up to them eventually, slowing that heavy slug down to a harmless drift. But the defense industry hates being stopped by water. Enter the terrifying world of supercavitating rounds. These are not your grandpa's bullets. They are specifically engineered to violate the standard laws of fluid drag. Instead of a pointy aerodynamic tip, these specialized bullets feature a completely flat, blunt nose at the front. When this flat nose strikes the water at high speed, it creates a magical pocket of air called a cavitation bubble. The bullet literally envelops itself in a protective gas bubble as it travels, pushing the heavy water away. Because the sides of the bullet touch air instead of dense water, the friction drops to near absolute zero. Inside this bubble, the bullet zips through the water with terrifying speed and lethal, pinpoint accuracy. If your enemy happens to have a magazine of supercavitating rounds, holding your breath won't save you today. Now, let's flip the script. What if the bad guy gets tired of shooting from the boat and jumps in after you? Firing a standard gun completely submerged underwater introduces a whole new circus of ridiculous malfunctions. First, there's the ammunition. Modern bullets are wonderfully watertight, shrugging off rain and high humidity. A quick dunk won't ruin a bullet. But if that gun sits at the bottom of the lake for hours, big problem. Water slowly creeps past the casing, completely soaking the volatile gunpowder hidden inside the brass shell. Wet gunpowder is about as explosive as a soggy bowl of cereal. You'll pull the trigger and hear a sad click. Assuming the powder is dry, you now face the mechanical action of the gun. Firearms are built for air pressure. When submerged, water fills the barrel and internal mechanisms, messing with the delicate explosive pressures. The expanding brass casing might jam violently, turning a sleek semi-automatic weapon into a useless metal brick. But the absolute biggest issue is internal ballistics. A barrel full of water is a nightmare for a bullet. The water inside the barrel is physically heavier than the bullet itself. The bullet must push that weight out. This saps almost all of its explosive energy before it even sees the light of day. It's a massive power drain. The bullet stumbles out of the barrel at a fraction of its normal speed, tumbling without any real stability. This exact physical limitation was beautifully showcased in a famous modern action movie involving an assassin. Two guys fall into a pool. The bad guy fires his gun from barely 3 feet away, expecting a lethal hit. But the bullet practically crawls through the water, losing all its momentum and sinking harmlessly to the tiles. A 9mm that normally travels 50 feet in the air couldn't even cross a tiny hot tub distance submerged. To get a lethal shot, the assassin had to swim up and press the barrel directly against his opponent's head. So standard guns are terrible submarines. But what if a military intentionally designed a gun just for divers? Welcome to the Cold War era, which gave birth to the bizarre and fascinating Soviet APS underwater rifle. This isn't a normal gun, it doesn't fire standard lead bullets, and it ignores traditional combustible powder. Instead, it fires massive, terrifyingly long metal darts. They look less like bullets and more like steel chopsticks. These long metal bolts are aerodynamically terrible in the air, but hydrodynamically perfect for slicing water. The barrel of this underwater weapon doesn't even have rifling those spiral grooves that make normal bullets spin. Spinning is great for air stability, but in water, it just creates chaotic turbulence. The darts fly perfectly straight. Thanks to its brilliant, fluid dynamic design, this bizarre weapon boasts an underwater range of nearly 100 feet. That is exponentially farther than any standard terrestrial firearm could ever hope to achieve when fully submerged. There is a catch, though. If you dive too deep, the crushing water pressure will cause the internal gas system to fail. So, to answer the ultimate cinematic question, is water actually bulletproof? The scientific answer is a solid yes, as long as you can dive deeper than 3 feet against rifles or 9 feet against handguns, you are totally safe. Water's incredible density acts as the ultimate liquid body armor, shattering supersonic rounds and stopping slow ones. But honestly, the best survival strategy is simply avoiding gunfights altogether. Subscribe for more crazy science.